Thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the subcommittee. I am Samuel Cotton, a PhD candidate in social policy at Columbia University, and I will be reading this statement in a summary fashion, only certain paragraphs to fit into the 5-minute requirement. And the Executive Director of the Coalition Against Slavery in Mauritania and Sudan, Cosmas and I are grateful for this opportunity to testify before the subcommittee about the buying, selling, and breeding of black Africans in the Islamic Republic of Mauritania by Arab Moors, Bedains. Between December 23, 1995 and January 17, 1996, I conducted ethnographic research in Senegal and Mauritania on the practice of slavery, utilizing camera, audio, and video recording devices. Interviews of black Mauritanians in the refugee camps of Jum, Bokadawi, Woroski, and Hokadari provided testimony which supported the charge that slavery is still a way of life in Mauritania and has simply shifted from an overt to a covert practice. I also interviewed Mauritanian refugees in Dakar, and I was also interested in finding out whether Garba Diallo's work, in which he talked about slaves moving from Mauritania across the Senegal River into Senegal, was valid. I did research on that and have documents to prove that small traffic exists. I arrived in Mauritania on January 2nd, 1996 and departed January 12th, 1996. I conducted interviews with the leaders of two anti-slavery organizations, Massoud Ould-Boukhar, president of El Hor, and Boubacar Massoud, president of SOS Slave. Both leaders stated that slaves are kept in bondage by a combination of physical restraint, psychological domination, religious manipulation, and the lack of government interest in creating programs that would enable slaves to make the transition to freedom. Boubacar Massoud added that slavery is massive in Mauritania, especially in the countryside, and that there is a traffic in slaves between Mauritania and the Arab immigrant states. To protest the practice of slavery, they've begun to put their articles in the newspapers that's been mentioned in the testimony, and they've done that to move from a political base to what they consider a legal base, just to let the world know that these things are happening. Haratines and runaway slaves state that the government of Mauritania does not penalize slaves, nor has it created any concrete programs at ending the practice of slavery. I've included in my testimony the case of Fatima Tu Mint Rabi Ould Ilai, and she is a child who was taken from her family by a government official and has disappeared into the slave network in Mauritania. This was also published in the newspaper Clam. And for the reasons that there are not these concrete programs or any laws with teeth in them, the Arab population carries on the business of slavery as they have for centuries. The difference is that today, the buying and selling of slaves takes place in the houses of Moors and are private arrangements between Arab families. Open slave markets are clearly a thing of the past. Marriages are arranged, and a strong black male is placed with a strong black female, and the Arab families arranging this marriage divide up the children that are born. Black women are bred many times by different slave men, and the children become the property of the master. When asked in an interview why her master holds her children, the slave woman Atiana Mint Abed Bouli stated, and her picture is right there, she was photographed in a safe house at night where she was hiding from people who've been sent by her master to retrieve her. When I asked her why her master was holding her children, she said, "Because my belly belongs to my master." I also interviewed 4 runaway slaves and 1 freed slave, 1 male and female. Their testimony was recorded. It is important to me that the United States State Department listen to the people in bondage and not the oppressive government of Mauritania. The shift in the language of the State Department from stating that slavery exists to stating that slavery is over and only the vestiges of slavery remains is disturbing. Then there are the attacks in the press on the Mauritanian refugee Mohamed Achieh by the United States Ambassador Dorothy Sampass in an effort to improve the image of the Mauritanian government, a government practicing a system of apartheid and guilty as recently as 1991 of the murder of 1,500 of his black citizens and ethnic cleansing of approximately 100,000 peaceful black citizens. These actions raise both ethical and moral questions for the United States. If slavery is over in Mauritania, when did this great event occur? Who observed the freeing of over 90,000 people? How and with what methods were the slaves informed that they are physically and spiritually free? Where are the interviews that indicate slaves are remaining in bondage only for economical reasons? What provisions for their physical needs were made, food, clothing, and shelter? How were they protected from their masters, recapturing them and returning them to slavery? What governmental or international organization monitored and evaluated the success of what would have to be a stupendous undertaking? Why didn't the Mauritanian government allow the political parties of the Negro Africans and the anti-slavery organizations of the Haratines monitor this major event, since slavery is at the top of their agenda? There aren't any valid answers to these questions because no empirical data, nor any studies conducted by experienced investigators, such as the London-based Anti-Slavery Society, exist, which support the statements of the State Department or Ambassador Dorothy Sampas. The United States was once a slaving nation and participated in the emancipation of millions of Africans. America has historical experience in this area and clearly recognized the need for concrete measures when it created the Freedmen's Bureau of 1865 after it argued for 2 years as to whether or not such an arrangement was necessary. Does the State Department really believe that a system of slavery that began before the American slave trade and has continued to this very day will not require concrete and measurable interventions? The last paragraph simply speaks to the fact that I hope that this change or shift in the Clinton administration's perspective on this country does not continue. Thank you.